there really is nothing that you can do to stop that predatory behavior other than you can own your truth. Mm-hmm. You can recognize this is not about having an actual constructive conversation about needs, because yours won't count. So you can either do the predator's bidding, and this is a form of slavery, essentially, or you can allow that anger and the rage and the disgust and the contempt and to occur and try to just recognize this is not about me. This is about the person I'm with. And in a safe relationship, we could talk this through. This isn't a safe relationship, and so I'm not going to be able to do that.
Hi, welcome back to Prey vs. Predator, the podcast. We are so happy for you to join us. And today we'll be discussing walking on eggshells, what it is. We are here to expose the tools that predators use. We're going to give you some examples of how it is used in relationships. And then we're going to talk to Prey about what they can do, if anything, to deal with these behaviors. So let's get started. Who would like to start?
I think at the outset, like when we say talking or walking on eggshells, we think about being in the same physical vicinity as our predators and just being so afraid to make a move or speak because of what's going to happen afterwards. But it can also take a form of any sort of communication, like emails and texts. You know, I remember trying to text my predator, and I write 3 words. No, he wouldn't like that. And then delete. Nope, he wouldn't like that. And it would take me, 30 minutes in order to write a text that should have taken me 30 seconds, because I knew that whatever I said, he would be able to say, well, this is wrong. Why did you do this? Why did you do this? Why did you do this? And it's paralyzing. So not only can you be paralyzed in a physical environment, you can be paralyzed with your predator in any sort of environment where there needs to be communication.
For me, I was going to talk about what it brings up visually. For me, I know probably maybe it came from actual eggs, but I always pictured like a half shell of an just all across the floor. And if you were to step on that, you would hear crunches. And the goal of the predator is for you to walk, but do not break an eggshell. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do not crunch. And you can't do it.
Right, like don't wake. I'm sleeping. Don't wake me up.
And every crunch would be a huge offense.
Yes, every crunch is a huge offense. So that for me is the definition. But I can also look up a more professional definition. But how about you? How about you, PJ? Is there a definition you have for yourself?
I think of, I tend to think in stories. There was an episode, or there was a movie called Sleeping with the Enemy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know.
I remember that one, yeah.
And there's a scene where the wife is trying to get the towels to be right even. But so terror, number one. And then when the person came in, like the person, like how you would feel like the person that you love thinks you're a loser and a failure and just a terrible human being, right?
Disgust is interesting.
For me, I felt just powerless. Like,
yeah,
I know that I would just sit in another room and I would just sit.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't move. I would sit on a chair. And again, I'm using the word paralyzed a lot, but yeah. I would just sit on a chair paralyzed because I could move. I was just so consumed with fear because I knew that this person that I was in relationship with was just so full of rage, so full of contempt, was so full of anger, and that any move that I made could have just unleashed a bomb.
And we're talking about men, people.
Yeah, men, people.
Men, people, doesn't matter. For my case, it's a woman. Yeah. That aren't physically doing anything to you. That's the different too, because somebody say, well, you feel terror, the person just walked in the room, and that's what's confusing as well, because essentially they're not, because there is situations where people are being physically assaulted, and we're not talking about that. That's a whole other arena. This is talking about walking on eggshells.
Well, I would
in an emotionally abusive situation.
What do you think of the idea that I don't know that it's a whole separate arena. I just think it's an extension of the same paradigm. Like I think it's the same paradigm. It's just,
I guess
it's
it's still control. It's still control. It's still abuse.
It's still terror.
Yeah.
It's still terrorizing. I'm just like, because I think even the physically abusive person that uses physical abuse to terrorize and to punish. And before they do that, they use emotional abuse to terrorize and punish. And so it might be that the dynamic is that they go to the nth degree of that paradigm, the extreme of that paradigm. I think the extreme paradigm of predatory behavior is
physical.
Is essentially taking the life of the person.
Yeah. It's on the route to that.
Because when I can look at the person I love and I can act like you disgust me and I hate you and I'm angry with you and I can demean you and devalue you, what can't I do to you? And so there is a sense when, there's a great Netflix show right now called The Maid. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it does such a tremendous job of exploring this idea of emotional abuse, and the woman in the movie really struggles with: is it abuse? Is it not abuse? Is it the same kind of abuse as people who are physically abused? But I see it as the same. I see it as the same beast, because in some ways, the only thing that's different is one you have. One, it's more clear that your life is in danger. And the other one, your value is in danger, if that makes sense. Your humanity is in danger. But I think that there's a fine line there.
I've got an official definition by Collins. It says to be very careful about what you say or do to someone because they are easily upset or offended.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't like that description at all. That description offends me.
You're so easily offended.
Sorry, I had to do that.
Collins, you did it wrong.
I don't like that description because I know I've hurt and offended my partner. Causes me some sadness. Causes me some I feel awful. I can't believe I hurt you. I can't believe I said something that hurt your feelings, or that might have been interpreted in a way, or I wasn't thinking about how that would look from your eyes. But there's no fear there. It's not, I don't fear offending my partner because we talk through it. We work it out. We'll have conversations about it. I don't fear him.
But you don't walk on eggshells around him.
Zero.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm going to offend my partner. It's that anything I say or do, I'm not sure what will. I'm not sure what won't. And my partner's response to that will not be to say, "Ow, that hurt." Like, "Oh, I'm offended," or "I'm hurt," or "I'm upset." My partner's response will be to look at me like I'm a worthless piece of garbage. And that is what I'm terrorized by. Like there is a universal standard for perfect and that I don't measure up.
Yeah, in my situation, my mother it was more like if she was in a certain mood, the family knew to like tiptoe and be okay around this person, so not to set her off. That was my situation. I remember there was one event, a family member was really sick. This family member, my mother really loves and loved, who is an amazing person in our family. And we were visiting, and I remember she was emotionally on edge for good reason. But when she was dealing with stuff emotionally, she takes things out rather than going, "Hey, I'm really sad right now. I'm really struggling." So she said, I remember wanting to ask questions about our family. And my mom has always kept things really tight, as far as like the trauma in our family and the pain. But I have an interest. I'm just interested.
You're sort of a historian by nature, right?
I love history and I love stories, and pain kind of doesn't scare me. And if anything, So I remember trying and feeling like I had to be gentle to tiptoe to navigate me asking questions about my history with her. And it was so complex. It was like a bomb. If I pulled the wrong thing, it's going to detonate.
Yeah.
I remember having that moment. I'm like, I'm walking on eggshells here, but I want to figure this out. And I also want to help her in this grieving process because that's what people do when they love them. And it was impossible. I remember it was just like, it was a shutdown. How could you ask me that? And I just clammed up. But I really was nervous how this bomb was going to go off because it was a walking bomb where I just wanted to be there. And I was curious, but my intention was never considered. It was like, how could you ask these questions or what's wrong with you that you want to know these questions rather than like, can't you see rather than, hey, you want to know your family. I'm feeling really sad. I don't know. This is really personal. Honey, I know, there was no care for me.
Yeah.
It was all about this person. And I think sometimes when we're walking on eggshells, we have to be careful around that person. That person has zero thought about or concern about us.
Right.
Which is so interesting because if one of your children say they wanted to comfort you or have a hard question, you'd probably honor that experience. But to make everybody tiptoe around it's so violating because you control the room, you control that to me, and I hate it. I hate that feeling because I've experienced it elsewhere. And maybe because I was raised with it, I could feel it in the room.
Right.
I could feel it.
It is an energy.
Oh, it's a complete energy. You better not say the wrong thing. You better meet my needs, weirdly enough.
Yeah. Or there's a price to pay. Something, Amber, in your story triggered a thought to me that I think is really important that we talk about, which is, I think part of the predator awareness kit that we need to add in here for people listening is that part of the sort of seduction of eggshell walking is that you believe, because the predator says it's true, you believe that you did or said something that set certain things in motion. Right?
Again, it's you.
Right.
It's your fault.
I don't want to send the wrong words in the text. You didn't want to ask the wrong question. And so I think that there is a part of this for healing and safety is for recognizing there isn't a text that you can send that will be perfect. There isn't a question that you can avoid asking when you're curious, because you have a right to be curious and it's okay to ask questions.
And I still struggle with that.
Yeah, I bet.
I still struggle with it as a grown-ass woman. Oh, I'm going to ask the wrong question and they're going to leave or they're going to be offended or they're not going to be my friend. Because I've even had people that have been friends who have a bit of predator energy tell me that my message was too long. Well, I've never said that to somebody. Like, if any of you two would send me a message and what's going on about it, I'd be like, awesome. I might not read it all right now because I don't have time, but I would not reprimand you.
Well, and as you're saying that, I'm laughing in my heart because literally I will get messages. In my culture, we tell stories. I think there's certain cultures that tell a lot of stories. And so I come from a culture of storytellers. And so it's so funny because my father in particular will leave a message on my voicemail back. I still actually have voicemail. And it's probably sometimes 4 or 5 minutes long.
Oh my.
And I just crack up and I save all of them because they make me laugh and I love it about him. And being from this culture myself and anybody, listening, and you guys well know, it's easy for me to tell endless stories and go on and on. And I'm happy to be told by people that love me and that I love like, just
Wrap it up.
I've actually, my kids have a little signal, like, get to the point.
moving your fingers around and get it on.
Let's
go. Yeah.
Let's go.
Let's go.
And there's no offense taken because it's because I love that about who I am. I love that about the people, the storytellers in my family. I love when people tell me the same story 2 or 3 times. But it's interesting. So the point is, like, loving your family, asking questions, sending your partner a text, playing with your kids on the floor. These are not things that generate disgust. They might generate irritation in a healthy partner, and your healthy partner will take that irritation to you and say, hey, babe, when I come home, could I text you before I leave? And could you do me a favor and keep that pathway clean? And I would say, sure, darling. I'd love to do that for you. I can really understand how that would be great. Would you mind feeding all the kids,
Yeah.
so that I can take time to, if I take time to do that, would you mind helping out in this area? Because that would really great. We could have that conversation. Or even just like, hey, Amber, honey, I love that you ask questions, and it's such a wonderful part of who you are. And you're kind of like the family historian. I'm really wondering if you'd be willing to just not ask questions today. I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed.
Exactly.
Right. And
then to be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I want to be here for you.
So it's not your partner having needs or your parent having needs. It's the pain of the person thinking you're disgusting or raging at you
because you can do something wrong.
Yeah. And
or another is, don't you dare engage with me. Don't you dare make a move.
Yeah. And the terror.
Yeah, terror.
So I think that part of, a healthy response to eggshell walking again is label it.
Yep.
You know what it is. Recognize the fear is not the criticism, because you can handle the criticism. You can handle the need that your partner has.
You can handle making a mistake too.
Yeah.
And often in these situations, the predator, acts as though any mistake that is made is a huge violation.
Right.
That it's a massive violation.
And you almost feel like you can never recover from it.
No.
Like it will be held against you.
You better work for it
forever. Yeah.
And so I think recognizing that the issue is not that you made a mistake. The issue is that you are in a relationship with a person who wants to use your common humanity, your failings, your brokenness, you're just being a person.
Your curiosity,
even things that are wonderful about you, they'll weaponize. They want to use those things to use them as moments to crush you and demean you and devalue you. And your body reacts in terror because we're not meant to be in relationship with people who are cruel because we don't feel safe. So our bodies start being fearful for good reason.
For me, my body, I also imagine, like we were talking about, you call it terror. You said the same thing, Jill.
Or paralyzing.
Yeah. So you can't move. But I also imagine it, you stiffen, you don't breathe. It's a contraction. You make yourself smaller.
That's right.
Yeah.
If I am smaller, if I am not so big, maybe I can pass, or maybe I won't crush so many eggshells. I won't upset the situation. So that is what I picture, making yourself smaller. And what we're suggesting as pray, don't make yourself smaller. That is not your job. If your bigness or your questions or your humanity is bothersome to somebody else, that is their problem.
I think they're saying you must take responsibility for my feelings.
Yes.
And we know that that's called codependence. Well,
I mean, it's certainly an attempt to get you to own their behavior and to be responsible for their behavior.
Right.
I think we'll talk about codependence at a different time. I think it'd be worth even diving into because the relationship in my mind isn't codependent in terms of,
sleeping with the enemy, I would never say that she was codependent. Was she? Like from remembering the movie, she was just terrorized by her predator.
Right. And was trying to get out.
Trying to get out.
Like a true codependent relationship, the person wants to stay in.
They get value from it.
Yeah.
And they don't want the other person to get better.
Right.
Or get healed.
Right.
So I think, but yeah, anyway, we'll talk about that definitely more. But I think for the issue of eggshell walking, the challenge is kind of like I've heard it described like a roller coaster, Jekyll and Hyde. You never know what you're getting from the person, and that's another part of kind of the confusion is you're never quite sure what you'll get when that person walks in the door. They might walk in the door with pizza and say, "Hey, we got pizza. Hey, everybody," or they might walk in the door and think you're a disgusting, worthless piece of trash.
Right.
And you can feel it. You can feel that energy. I think it's an energy. I also think of the eggshells as far as the fragility of that. And it's almost like that person is so fragile, weirdly enough. Like, you better not break me. You better not break me. And it's like, well, you're not that fragile. Well, I am. You broke me. You cracked me. And it's like, well, no. I can ask questions. I can breathe. I can be in this room. I can play with my children. I can text you and make it too long or fumble a text, or I can ask questions and be alive and be big.
Yeah. And if somehow you write every time, 4 pages of text, then I have a problem with that I'll see that as my personal preference, not your personal defect.
Exactly.
Right.
And we can have a conversation, a dialogue about
and
it.
I can ask if you'd be willing to take my preferences into consideration when you're connecting with me. And you may or you may not. The real challenge here, like most of the challenges with predators, is as much as you can realize that this is eggshell walking, this is inappropriate behavior, you cannot stop it from hurting. And you cannot stop the predator from punishing you and doing the behavior. And so you're really stuck with, even if I recognize it, even if I name it, my predator is not going to stop.
So what now? What do you do?
And this is, we're bumping up against a brick wall so many times here. I mean, if you go to somebody who does this and you say, "Honey, this hurts so bad," or "Mom or Dad, this is just devastating to me," and they don't recognize it and they say, "I'm so sorry. I never even realized I was doing that," and they stop. Your person's not a predator. You're good. They're just, being an ass, and we all can be that sometimes. The true predatory behavior doesn't end. They're just offended that you would say this about them, and you wouldn't recognize that, did you not see the text you sent? Nobody else has a child who asks this many questions. So then it becomes this issue of you really can't do anything to stop the behavior from happening.
No.
Chime in here if there's something that you can brainstorm. There really is nothing that you can do to stop that predatory behavior, other than you can own your truth. You can recognize this is not about having an actual constructive conversation about needs, because yours won't count. So you can either do the predator's bidding, and this is a form of slavery, essentially, or you can allow that anger and the rage and the disgust and the contempt to occur, and try to just recognize this is not about me. This is about the person I'm with. And in a safe relationship, we could talk this through. This isn't a safe relationship, and so I'm not going to be able to do that.
I think that's exactly it. And I also think you need to value yourself. And I often, because I am navigating within the relationship of a predator still, I would say, don't lose who you are if that person is wanting the world to walk on eggshells around them.
Yeah.
To maintain who you are and what you are, and don't shrink. You don't have to poke the bear necessarily. You don't have to throw eggs around the room and start crunching, but you can also keep going and doing what you're doing and not stop because that behavior has entered the room or that person has entered the room. It's awful. There's nothing you can do in that moment, but just stay with yourself.
Yeah. And try not to lose you. You know, and I guess the sadness to me is this is the type of relationship, the longer you're in, the harder it is to be true to you. The harder it is to navigate.
Remember that you have needs and that you have the right to ask for what you want.
You have a right to ask for them. And in a healthy relationship, your partner will care deeply about them. One of the questions I had for you, Amber, do you notice any difference with your predator? Because yours is a parent. When we're talking about, the difference between childhood and adulthood, is there a different quality eggshell walking? Like maybe we could talk about this in terms of red flags.
Yeah, is there any signs?
Did it happen early or later? Or?
I don't think as a child. I think a child, you're so oblivious. You just kind of play and do your thing and you have these thoughts. I think it was more of, remember that idea of like, you hurt me, I'm not going to talk to you until you apologize. So that I remember was devastating, that comment, because I thought forever she's not going to talk to me again. So it was more of a withdrawal of love, or withdrawal, which we've talked about before, right? We talked about that as a predatorial thing. As far as adulthood, I think I would start to notice, okay, I'm going to come towards you and I got to be careful. That's how I pictured it. Even now, if I was to have a serious conversation with my parent, I would have to navigate it so carefully.
Okay.
So carefully. And it's eggshell walking. It really is. Like if I was to ever say, let's go to therapy or we need to talk about an issue, it's just better not to.
Yeah.
And anytime she has surprised me with being quite loving, it's a Jekyll and Hyde thing, but I've navigated it like almost holding my breath, like, oh no, what's going to be said? And then she's been kind. So it's a bit discombobulating, I think, which is what I talked about even in my story about being confused.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I was to have a serious conversation or I know if there's a mood switch in the house, if I'm visiting at Christmas, everybody is like, holding their breath and walking on eggshells around this person. And there's that thing in me that's like, no. We're going to have fun. We're going to have a good Christmas. And that's my fire. That's my thing where I don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
It's not always helpful for the situation. And I know in a marriage situation that might not work. So if you guys want to speak to that.
Like for me, a red flag is when your other person is always the victim.
Oh.
Pay attention to me. I'm a victim. Feel bad for me. This horrible thing has happened to me.
That's good.
When someone is just continually a victim, it's, huge red flag.
That is really fascinating, Jill. I never thought of that as being associated with eggshell walking.
But it is.
Because
if you aren't catering to their victim mentality, you're going to pay.
Yeah, I'm kind of sitting here a little stunned right now. Like, whoa, when all these puzzle pieces start fitting into, you just did that for me. You just put a lot of pieces in place.
$50 right there.
Okay, so yeah, you get paid later. Thank you for that because that if that's a red flag for eggshell walking,
yeah.
Which is, I think you're spot on. Bang. Like, that's huge. Yeah. I feel like I'm learning so much.
This has been so insightful. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you feel like you are in a relationship where you are regularly having to walk on eggshells, please reach out to us. We are here for you.
You can check us out on social media at Prey vs. Predator. The link can be found in the description of our podcast. Thanks, everybody.